Oh, Mr. Sun, Sun, Mr. Frigid Sun, just get eaten, please. In our last two videos together, we discussed dragons turning into trees, which dovetailed a bit into discussing Destined Death, and ritual sacrifice, which dovetailed a lot into discussing Destined Death. Today we're hopefully completing that picture with a look into the many lions of the lands between, which will inevitably dovetail into discussing Destined Death. But before we begin, a quick primer. Whenever I spot a motif in Elden Ring that matches a motif in A Song of Ice and Fire, my usual go-to strategy is to apply the A Song of Ice and Fire interpretation to Elden Ring and see if it holds up. And in A Song of Ice and Fire, lions are most frequently associated with the sun. This is most plainly seen in the founding myth of House Lannister, which claims the Lannisters are descendants of the ancient hero Lan the Clever, who obtained his golden locks after stealing a drop of sunlight from the gods. I believe this interpretation holds true for Elden Ring as well. In context, the golden lion symbol is meant to harken back to Siraj, the golden lion beast man thing. He's not just a lion, guys, he has thumbs, and is used as the sigil of the Golden Order. But associating a golden lion with a group of people already associated with a giant golden tree, to me, is a clear way to link both of those ideas back to the sun. And I mean, the Erd tree is clearly a stand-in for the sun, right? Like, this isn't controversial, right? It's bigger than everything, it's golden bright, it gives life to the world, and it's in the middle of literally the entire map. Like, it's the sun. Of course, golden lions aren't the only things we see in this world. We see plenty of black lions, too. And if golden lions symbolize a golden sun, what do black lions symbolize? A black sun, very good. In other words, a solar eclipse. Again, this line of symbolism appears in A Song of Ice and Fire as well. For example, an ancient Far Eastern religion has for their two supreme deities the Maiden Maid of Light and the Lion of Night, symbols of the sun and the eclipsed sun respectively. Their first child rode on a giant pearl palanquin and was escorted by his 1,000 wives, a stand-in for the moon and stars. Related to the eclipse is a recurring color motif found all throughout Elden Ring, black and gold. When I say the words solar eclipse, you probably picture a complete solar eclipse, which is the one where the white corona can be seen surrounding a completely blackened sun. But there are also annular or ring eclipses, which occur when the moon is just a little too far out from the Earth to block the sun completely. When this happens, there's still too much light to see the corona, and you end up with a striking golden ring around a black sun. Fun fact, these are also called Ring of Fire eclipses, and early concept art of the Wandering Mausoleums show they were originally designed with a ring of torches above them, which is just good symbolism if you ask me. So if you've got approximately this many minutes to kill, then stick around, because at the end of all this, I have some pretty wild revelations about the resurrection of Godwyn and Malekith's condition. Let's get started. If we're going to discuss golden lions, then the obvious place to start is with Siraj, who symbolizes golden lions by being, bear with me here, a golden lion. In universe, Siraj was joined, one might say grafted, to Godfrey in order to quell his bloodthirst, so that he might serve as a proper dainty lord. I love their design because, symbolically, I think it's a delightful diagram of how I imagine the whole Erd Tree Great Tree system works. The golden Erd Tree, here played by Siraj, is grafted onto the back of the Great Tree, here played by Godfrey. And it's also worth noting that Siraj impedes Godfrey's rage by biting him, which gives the appearance of him eating the very thing he's grafted to. Again, much like how I believe the Erd Tree works. So this one's a little bit complicated, naturally. Radagon has two major animal motifs, wolves and lions. Wolves are seen in his connection with the Red Wolves of the Champions, and through Marika describing him as a leal hound of the Golden Order. However, we also find some lion parallels through two main channels, Radahn and the Leonine Misbegotten. Radahn's design evokes ideas of both Radagon and Godfrey, which to me suggests we should see all three as parallels. Though he styled himself after a lion in honor of his #1 man crush Godfrey, his red mane evokes the image of Lord Radagon. This parallel is further reinforced through the Leonine Misbegotten. Red-haired lion warriors often found wielding legendary swords, including Radagon's very own Golden Order Greatsword. And if that wasn't enough, then consider that their AI name in Elden Ring's code is literally titled Children of Radagon. I have a couple interpretations of this parallel I'd like to mention. Firstly, it suggests that Radagon, like the Leonine Misbegotten, is a bit of a thief. We're never told how the Misbegotten come across the legendary weapons, so the simplest answer would be they stole them. Given that he figuratively stole Renala's heart, and literally stole her sword, this suggestion makes sense. More importantly for the lore, however, is that the Misbegotten are among the many bastards of Elden Ring's world. That's what the word Misbegotten means. I hope to go over this in more detail in the future, but for now, know that being a bastard in the Lands Between doesn't seem to imply the same thing as it does in the real world, and often suggests one's parentage is magical in some sense. We know nothing about Radagon's parentage, but given what we know about him, the suggestion that he's a magical bastard isn't completely out of left field. Maliketh is Marika's shadow, a beast-man assigned to her by the Two Fingers to defend her, act as her right-hand man, and potentially dispose of her should the need arise. Throughout the game, however, we see tons of characters with either lion symbolism or black and gold color palettes that all symbolically point them back to Maliketh. For that reason, we'll keep this brief for now. We'll be able to say more about him as we explore the other characters. For now, though, one thing I do want to discuss is an important point of contention. Is Maliketh a lion or a wolf? In context, the answer is wolf. Wolves do show up defending characters all throughout the game, just like Maliketh, and the Raging Wolf set lays it out plain, that wolves are the shadows of Empyreans. But while wolves are shadows, lions are champions, as explained by the Beast Armor set, and Maliketh is one of those too. Plus, I believe wolves are symbols of the moon, just as lions are symbols of the sun. And if that's the case, then the two crossing over in Maliketh makes sense if Maliketh is indeed symbolizing the eclipse. And I mean, look at that mane. When's the last time you saw a wolf with one of those? And just to clinch the idea that lions can be shadows too, we have Lionel the Lionhearted. The Lion Association is just in his name, but to be clear, they did say it twice. The color black is called out in his armor's item description, and the only other colors are the golden banner he wears on his back and the red tuft atop his helmet. The color red is never called out like black and gold are in the shadow characters, but it's a common tertiary color found alongside them. I can only speculate as to what the banner itself means, but it seems to evoke an oath of some sort, sworn under the sun. Swearing oaths to their Empyreans is a thing shadows do, so that alone works with the parallel well. Lionel's Empyrean in this parallel is played by Fia, who really is just a whole discussion unto herself, but suffice it to say, she's got quite a few parallels with Marika. Lionel swore an oath to defend her, and then claimed to be Fia's father. Shadows are all considered adopted family to those they protect. Maliketh is considered Marika's half-brother, so again, this further completes the parallel. We're going to be abandoning the lions and our symbolism for just a bit while we explore our color matching parallels, but don't fret, they'll come back in a big way. Mohg's robes, which sounds like a working title for Hell's Bells, are specifically called black and gold, which invites us to compare him to Maliketh and the other shadows. Like Maliketh, Mohg is deeply invested in defending his half-sibling, though his motivations might be different. But also like Maliketh, he's a bodyguard and a champion, fighting in Miquella's place while he's incapacitated. And then there's the altar. We'll come back to that. Though it's hard to see in the murky lighting of his boss fight, Lich Dragon Fortisax is black and gold. This alone is enough to get our suspicions up, but when we take a peek at the Japanese remembrance descriptions, it gets even better. But first, a quick Japanese lesson. This character means to corrode in Japanese and Chinese, but it also means solar eclipse. And that's the sense in which it means it, that the sun is being corroded. This is the word that's used in-game, even though more commonly used in Japan is its cognate, which means to eat. And that's the sense in which it means to corrode, as in to eat away. Hence all the characters talking about the sun being swallowed. But this isn't the point. What is the point is that in the JP description of Fortisax's remembrance, it states he was corroded by the Rune of Death in Godwyn's dream. Corruption was a sad but understandable choice made by the translators because there was no way to localize this wordplay. But in Japanese, this is a very deliberate pun, and it shows up all the time in Eclipse-associated characters. So seeing these two combined in Fortisax just doubles up the Eclipse imagery. That is really cool. But as far as him being one of Godwyn's shadows, well again, like Mohg, he serves as a fight to defend an incapacitated demigod. He's never called out as kin to Godwyn, but he is called a good friend, so I'll leave that up to the individual on whether or not that qualifies. Bet you forgot about this guy, huh? And that's why he's on the back end. The bones of his armor are specified as being gold, and upon looking at it we can see it is, indeed, black and gold. He acts as Gideon's bodyguard and cat's paw, wink wink, and his armor calls out a connection to an ancient, soulless king named Ensha. We have no idea who this king was, or if he really is connected to Destined Death, but the phrasing is present in both languages and is very deliberate. So that wraps up our bit on shadows and shadow lions. Almost. I've got one more thing to mention, and I'm not sure how to go about it, but to just say it and run away. So here we go. Malekith is pregnant. Metaphorically. Hear me out. We already know from Thea that the runes can be thought of as children, and Malekith has the rune of death inside him. And it appears to be causing side effects. For example, Malekith is having some intense cravings. But no matter how much he eats, he's just always hungry. Almost like he's eating for two. And it's not just Malekith either. Mohg has a ton of pregnancy symbolism. You've probably seen on Reddit that Mycoline's cocoon resembles a breached uterus. Specifically, it resembles this scientific diagram of a breached uterus. He's even got the pelvic bone. And let's be real, I can't even think of a contextual reason for the pelvic bone to be there. So what purpose could it possibly serve other than to complete the image of a pregnant womb? Lionel has a baby bump. And Radahn as well seems to share in this symbolism. I'll get to how in a second, but first I need to come clean about something else. You see, there may not be any real difference between golden lions and black lions after all. I'll admit, the details are still confusing me. You see, two of our golden lions have just a subtle suggestion of black in their color scheme. The Beast Claw Great Hammer specifies that its golden fur and black claws are meant to symbolize Sarash, who I previously said was a golden lion. So why the black claws? Could this imply that he too is a metaphorical shadow? Radahn too plays tricksy with the whole golden lion idea. His armor is full of it, but his face is turned bluish black. Inside his helmet, his corrupted face, framed by the golden lion, evokes an image of a solar eclipse. And as far as him being pregnant goes, check this out. The land octopus ovary mentions how the land octopus mother must consume humans so it can use human blood to make eggs. Through this, we can see that eating human flesh is just another really fucked up symptom of being metaphorically pregnant. So there you have it, one of the big conclusions of the video. Malekith is pregnant. And maybe Radahn too. But to be honest, I'm not quite sure where to take it from here. I think it's a fun and fascinating insight into Malekith's character, and another cool way that Elden Ring toys with the concept of gender. But as far as making any predictions about the characters or the lore, that's where it gets tricky. But for the sake of giving him my best effort, the first implication would be that Marika, who wears the same black and gold color palette as all the other shadow figures, may also be pregnant. But it's hard to know if that's literal or not, and if it's not, what it might mean. There is one other pregnant figure I think we can discuss, however, and that may very well be the solar eclipse itself. Sometimes the best discoveries happen through pure stupidity, serendipity. The story goes that I was discussing lore theories with the very attractive gentleman who makes my thumbnails, love you Bill, when his phone autocorrected Castle's Soul to Castle's Soul. Naturally, I wanted to bully him mercilessly, but the more I looked at it, the more I became convinced that this might be a deliberate pun. If the name was indeed coined by George R.R. Martin, he loves this nerd shit. But think about it, there's a mausoleum carrying a soulless demigod right outside Castle Soul. And the whole castle is full of ghosts. I guess you could say they're the castle souls of Castle Soul. So that got me thinking about what this pun might be meant to suggest, and eventually I wondered, what if the sun is needed to perform a perfect rebirth alongside the moon? We already know from Renala that the powers of the moon can be used to power rebirth, but we also see that that power on its own is imperfect, and those returned with this power are incomplete with shortened lifespans. Rebirth through the Erd Tree, which we've already discussed is a parallel to the sun, is a fuzzier topic, We know that bodies must return to the roots physically to be reborn, but what that rebirth ultimately looked like on the other side is unelaborated on. But I think the possibility is certainly there that the rebirthing powers of the moon and the Erd Tree stroke the sun must somehow be joined before Godwyn can be truly reborn. This brings us back to the walking mausoleums, which are stated to be symbolic of the solar eclipse. We can see the image of the demigod carried within as the solar eclipse being pregnant with the soulless demigod inside. Perhaps that's what the rest of Godwyn is, somehow, and bringing the eclipse about will join them back together again. There is a lot of speculation here, unfortunately, but I'm doing my best. So then, why hasn't the solar eclipse occurred? It's actually odd that so many characters lament that because it implies they expected it should. Well, I don't have an answer to that question yet. I'm hoping that what I've talked about in this video will encourage some digging by members of the community, but for the sake of completeness and giving it my best shot, I feel like we should look back to the walking mausoleums for an answer. To bring the walking mausoleums down, you have to clear out the skulls around their bottoms. Perhaps that's what we need to do. Maybe Destined Death still persisting in the lands between is why there is no solar eclipse, and we'll need to clear out the Destined Death below to bring down the solar eclipse above and allow access to the soul of Godwyn once more. In the end, there's still a ton of mystery surrounding Godwyn, Marika, and the eclipse. My friend demanded I include a section about Mikola just because he too is a prominent figure surrounding the eclipse, and I just couldn't find the space. I guess he's gonna have to shoot my dogs after all, but I believe these parallels we've discussed today give us some important insights about the nature of the eclipse and the reason why it's a necessary component in Godwyn's revival.